The dust devil that swept through Ruby City, Nevada on that scorching August afternoon in 1882, carried more than just sand and tumbleweeds. It brought a stranger whose arrival would change everything for the woman the town had branded a curse. Beatrice Hollis stood behind the cracked window of her ramshackle cabin on the outskirts of town, watching the lone rider approach through the shimmering heat. Her fingers clutched the faded curtain, knuckles white against the worn fabric. She knew better than to hope anymore. Hope had died 3 years ago when they found her husband's body at the bottom of Copper Canyon, his neck broken, his horse nowhere to be found. Hope had been buried deeper still when the bank foreclosed on their ranch 6 months later. And hope had turned to ash when the town decided that Beatrice Hollis was the reason bad things happened in Ruby City. The rider drew closer, and Beatrice could make out more details now. A tall man, broad-shouldered, sitting easy in the saddle like he and the horse were one creature. His hat was pulled low against the brutal sun, casting his face in shadow. He rode a paint horse, black and white patches gleaming with sweat. Most travelers bypassed her property entirely, following the main road that curved away from what folks now called the Cursed Woman's Hovel. But this man seemed to be riding straight toward her gate. Beatrice's heart hammered against her ribs. She touched the small pistol she kept in her apron pocket, a habit born of necessity. Living alone as an unmarried woman, well, a widow, though some in town whispered she had killed her husband herself, meant trusting no one. The rider stopped at her broken fence, the one she had tried to mend last week before the wood had splintered in her hands, giving her a nasty gash across her palm that still throbbed. He dismounted with fluid grace, looping his reins over what remained of the fence post. "Madam." His voice carried across the dusty yard, deep and measured. "I don't mean to intrude, but my horse is limping, and I was hoping you might have some water to spare." Beatrice hesitated. Her well was one of the few in the area that hadn't run dry this brutal summer, something else the townspeople held against her. "Why should my well still give water when ours have turned to dust?" Old Mrs. Patterson had shrieked at her in the mercantile last month. "It's unnatural. She's unnatural." But this stranger didn't know about any of that. He was just a traveler with a lame horse, and Beatrice had been raised better than to turn away someone in need, no matter what cruelties had been visited upon her. "There's a trough by the barn," she called back, her voice rough from disuse. She spoke to so few people these days. "Help yourself." She watched from the window as he led his horse toward the barn, moving with an unhurried confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. He was younger than she had first thought, perhaps in his late 20s, only a few years older than her own 24 years. When he removed his hat to wipe his brow, she caught sight of dark hair and a strong profile. The horse drank deeply, and the man crouched down to examine its front left leg, his long fingers gentle and sure. Beatrice found herself drawn outside despite her better judgment, her curiosity and the basic human need for conversation overriding her caution. "How bad is it?" she asked, stopping a respectful distance away. The man looked up, and Beatrice felt her breath catch. He had the most striking eyes she had ever seen, a clear gray blue like the sky just after a storm. His face was tanned and weathered, with strong bones and a mouth that looked like it smiled often, though it was serious now. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a roguish appearance. "Stone bruise, I think," he said, rising to his full height. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and Beatrice had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "Nothing serious, but he needs rest. I'm sorry to impose, madam, but would you mind if I camped nearby for the night? I can pay for the water and any feed you might spare." "I don't have much feed," Beatrice said honestly. "This drought has been hard on everyone." "I noticed." His gaze swept across her property, taking in the struggling vegetable garden, the leaning barn, the cabin that desperately needed repairs. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only observation. "Seems like you've had your share of hard times." Beatrice stiffened, waiting for the inevitable recognition, the sudden step backward, the excuse to leave. Everyone in Ruby City and the surrounding ranches knew about the cursed widow. But the stranger's expression remained open, curious. "You can camp by the creek bed," she heard herself say. "There's no water in it now, but there's some shade from the cottonwoods. You're welcome to fill your canteen from the well." "That's mighty kind of you, madam." "My name's Harrison Noble, and I'm grateful for your hospitality." He extended his hand. Beatrice stared at it for a moment, unable to remember the last time someone had offered to shake her hand like she was a regular person. Slowly, she reached out and clasped it. His grip was warm and calloused, the hand of a working man. "Beatrice Hollis," she said quietly. She saw no flicker of recognition in his eyes. He was truly a stranger then, passing through, knowing nothing of her supposed curse. Something in her chest loosened just a fraction. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Mrs. Hollis." He released her hand and reached for his saddlebags. "It's just Miss Hollis now," she said, then immediately wondered why she had corrected him. What did it matter what this passing stranger called her? "Miss Hollis," he repeated, and something in his tone made her look up sharply, but his expression was merely polite. She left him to make camp and retreated to her cabin, where she pressed her hands against her burning cheeks. What was wrong with her? One kind word from a handsome stranger, and she was blushing like a schoolgirl. She had learned the hard way that people could not be trusted, that kindness in Ruby City came with strings attached or not at all. But as the afternoon wore into evening, she found herself preparing more supper than she needed: salt pork and beans, biscuits made from her dwindling flour supply, even some of the precious preserves she had been hoarding. Before she could question her actions, she was walking toward the creek bed with a plate heaped with food. Harrison had built a small fire and was tending to his horse, rubbing the animal down with a worn cloth. He looked up at her approach, surprise evident on his face. "I thought you might be hungry," Beatrice said, suddenly feeling foolish. "It's not much." "It smells like heaven," Harrison said with genuine warmth. "You didn't have to go to this trouble, Miss Hollis, but I'm not fool enough to refuse. Would you join me? I hate eating alone, and I'd welcome the company if you're of a mind." Beatrice knew she should refuse. She should go back to her cabin and lock the door and remember that nothing good came from opening herself up to people. But she found herself nodding, found herself sitting on the log he brushed off for her, found herself sharing a meal with a stranger as the sun painted the Nevada sky in shades of orange and crimson. "This is delicious," Harrison said after his first bite, and she could tell he meant it. "Best meal I've had in weeks. I'm not much of a cook myself." "Where are you headed?" Beatrice asked, surprised by her own boldness. "Nowhere in particular," Harrison said, gazing into the fire. "I've been drifting for a while now, picking up ranch work where I can find it. Trying to figure out what comes next, I suppose. Running from something or running towards something." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Beatrice felt exposed under that clear gaze. "Maybe both. I lost my family's ranch in Colorado 2 years back. Bank foreclosure. My father took it too hard. He died that winter. My mother had already passed years before, and I had no siblings. I guess I've been wandering ever since, not sure where I belong anymore." "I'm sorry," Beatrice said softly, and she meant it. She knew that particular pain, the loss of everything familiar. "What about you?" Harrison asked gently. If you don't mind my asking, how does a young woman end up alone on a failing homestead in the middle of nowhere? Beatrice stiffened, the old defensiveness rising up. But there was no malice in his question, only genuine curiosity. And something about the gathering darkness, the intimacy of the shared fire made her want to talk, to tell someone her story. "My husband died 3 years ago," she began slowly. "Thomas. We had a ranch, not large but prosperous. We were happy, or I thought we were. He went out riding one morning and never came home. They found him at the bottom of Copper Canyon, his neck broken. The sheriff said it was an accident, that his horse must have spooked." "But you don't think so?" Beatrice shook her head. "Thomas was the best horseman I ever knew, and his horse was never found. But I had no proof of anything else, no evidence of foul play. 6 months later, the bank foreclosed. Turns out Thomas had taken out loans I didn't know about, made investments that failed. I lost everything except this piece of land, which wasn't worth enough for the bank to bother with." She paused, watching the flames dance. Harrison waited patiently, not pushing. "Then the bad luck started," she continued. "Or that's what people called it. The Pattersons' barn burned down a week after I moved here. Old Mr. Chen's mine collapsed, killing 2 men. A child fell sick with fever. Nothing that couldn't be explained by natural causes, but people needed someone to blame. And I was convenient the widow living alone, strange and solitary. They started calling me cursed, said I brought bad luck to anyone who came near me." "That's superstitious nonsense," Harrison said firmly. "Is it?" Beatrice laughed bitterly. "My hired hand, the only person willing to work for me, broke his leg on my property last year. The doctor who came to treat me when I had influenza lost 3 patients that same week. My neighbor's well went dry the day after he helped me fix my roof. People notice these things, Harrison. They remember." "Coincidence, not curse," Harrison insisted. "Bad things happen everywhere to everyone. It's just life in a hard land. Try telling that to the people of Ruby City. I'm not welcome in town anymore. The mercantile owner serves me but won't look me in the eye. The church ladies cross the street when they see me coming. Children are warned to stay away from the cursed widow's cabin." Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. "I'm 24 years old and I'm completely alone in this world." Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but serious. "You're not alone right now." Beatrice looked up, startled by the intensity in his eyes. "You'll leave tomorrow when your horse is healed. Everyone leaves." "Maybe," Harrison said. "Or maybe I'll stay. Truth is, I've been looking for a place to settle, to start fresh. And I'm not afraid of curses or bad luck or small-minded people who need someone to blame for their troubles." "You don't know what you're saying," Beatrice whispered. "You don't know what it's like here." "Then tell me, I want to know," and so she did. As the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead, Beatrice told Harrison Noble everything about the loneliness that ate at her soul, about the fear that she really might be cursed, about the dreams she had once had of a family and a future that now seemed impossibly distant. She told him things she had never spoken aloud, and he listened without judgment, without false comfort, just listened like her words mattered. When she finally fell silent, emotionally exhausted, Harrison spoke. "I can't promise that I can fix everything or make the town accept you. But I can promise that I'll help with repairs around your property, that I'll stand beside you if you'll let me, and that I don't believe for 1 second that you're cursed. You're just a woman who's had more than her fair share of hardship, and you deserve better." "Why?" Beatrice asked, bewildered. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Harrison smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his face. "Because when I rode up this afternoon and saw you in that window, something in my gut told me I was exactly where I was supposed to be." and I've learned to trust that feeling. Besides, a wise woman once offered me water when I needed it, and I'm not the type to forget a kindness." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried too many times alone in her cabin, and she would not cry now in front of this stranger who offered her something she had thought lost forever: hope. "You're welcome to stay in the barn," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's not much, but it's better than sleeping on the ground." "I appreciate that, Miss Hollis, and tomorrow, if you're willing, I'd like to start on that fence. A good fence makes all the difference on a property." As Beatrice walked back to her cabin that night, she looked up at the stars and allowed herself to wonder, just for a moment, if maybe Harrison Noble was right. Maybe she wasn't cursed. Maybe she had just been waiting for someone brave enough to see past the fear and superstition to the truth underneath. The next morning, Beatrice woke to the sound of hammering. She dressed quickly and stepped outside to find Harrison already at work on the fence, his shirt sleeves rolled up, sweat already darkening the fabric across his shoulders despite the early hour. He had somehow found the decent lumber from the collapsed section of her barn and was methodically replacing the broken fence posts. "You're up early," she called out, shading her eyes against the rising sun. Harrison looked up and grinned. "Old habit. My father used to say the best work gets done before the heat of the day sets in. Hope I didn't wake you." "No, I'm usually up at dawn myself. There's coffee if you want some, and I can make breakfast." "Coffee sounds like a gift from heaven, but you don't have to feed me, Miss Hollis." "You've already been more than generous." "Beatrice," she said impulsively. "You can call me Beatrice, and I have to eat anyway, so you might as well join me." Over breakfast eggs from her struggling chickens and more biscuits, Harrison asked about the property, about what she grew, about her plans. It had been so long since anyone asked her about her plans, as if she might have a future worth planning for. "I used to have a decent vegetable garden," Beatrice explained. "Tomatoes, beans, squash, potatoes. I sold the surplus in town. But the drought has made everything harder, and without help, I can only manage so much." "What about livestock?" "I have 6 chickens, but I used to have more. Something's been getting them, coyotes or foxes, I think. I had 2 cows, but I sold them last year when I needed money for supplies. I couldn't afford feed for them anyway." Harrison nodded thoughtfully. "Good fencing would help with the predators. And I noticed your well, you said it hasn't gone dry." "No, and that's part of why people think I'm cursed. Every other well for miles has gone dry or turned brackish, but mine still runs clear and cold." "That's not a curse, Beatrice. That's a blessing. Water is worth more than gold in this country, especially in a drought. You could sell water to your neighbors, help them out while earning income." Beatrice shook her head. "They wouldn't buy from me. They'd rather haul water from town than take anything from the cursed widow." "Their loss and their foolishness," Harrison said firmly, "but that's their choice to make. In the meantime, with reliable water, you could expand your garden, maybe even think about a few animals again." "That takes money I don't have, and it takes help. I can't manage it alone." "You're not alone anymore," Harrison said quietly, and the way he looked at her made Beatrice's heart skip a beat. "Not if you don't want to be." "Harrison, you don't understand what you're offering. Helping me, being seen with me, it could turn the whole town against you too." "Let them try," Harrison said with a slight edge to his voice. "I've dealt with worse than small-town gossip. I've been shot at by cattle rustlers, caught in stampedes, survived blizzards that killed better men than me. I'm not going to be frightened off by superstitious whispers." Despite herself, Beatrice felt a smile tugging at her lips. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Maybe both," Harrison admitted with a grin. "But I mean what I said. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay and help you get this place back on its feet." I'm good with repairs, decent with animals, and I can plant a garden that would make my mother's look pitiful. I don't have much money, but I have skills and I'm willing to work. We could be partners in this." "Partners," Beatrice repeated slowly, testing the word. "What would you want in return?" "Room and board, honest conversation, and a chance to build something lasting. I'm tired of drifting, Beatrice. I'm tired of temporary work and moving on before I can put down roots. Maybe this is where I'm meant to stop running." Beatrice looked into his eyes, those clear gray-blue eyes that held no deception, and made a decision that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "All right. Yes, you can stay and we'll try this partnership. But Harrison, if things get difficult with the town, if they make trouble for you, I'll understand if you need to leave." "I won't leave," Harrison said with absolute certainty. "That's a promise." Over the following days, Harrison proved himself true to his word. He repaired the fence with a craftsmanship that spoke of years of experience. He fixed the leaning barn, reinforcing the structure and replacing rotted boards. He cleaned out the well and built a better cover for it. He worked from dawn until dusk, and Beatrice found herself working alongside him, the two of them falling into an easy rhythm. They talked while they worked, sharing stories of their lives. Harrison told her about growing up on his family's ranch in Colorado, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about his mother's flower garden that she tended with the same care most people gave to crops. Beatrice told him about her childhood in Sacramento, about how she had met Thomas at a dance and married him within 6 months, young and in love and sure their future would be golden. "You miss him?" Harrison asked one afternoon as they worked side by side in the garden, pulling weeds and trying to coax life from the drought-stressed plants. Beatrice considered the question honestly. "I miss who I thought he was. I miss the life I thought we were building. But if I'm truthful, I don't know if I ever really knew Thomas. He kept secrets, the loans, the gambling debts I found out about after he died, the fact that he was planning to sell the ranch without telling me. I loved him, but I'm not sure he loved me the same way." "His loss," Harrison said quietly. "Any man who couldn't see your worth was a fool." Beatrice felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You barely know me. I know you're strong. I know you've survived things that would have broken most people. I know you're kind even after the world has been cruel to you. I know you make the best biscuits I've ever tasted, and you work harder than any 3 men I've known. That's enough for me to know your worth." Beatrice didn't know what to say to that, so she focused on the weeds in front of her, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. On the 8th day after Harrison's arrival, Beatrice needed to go into town for supplies. She had been putting it off, dreading the cold stares and whispered comments, but her flour was nearly gone and she needed salt and sugar and thread. "I'll come with you," Harrison said when she mentioned her plans. "You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to see this town that's been so unwelcoming to you. Besides, you shouldn't have to face them alone." They rode into Ruby City in the wagon Beatrice rarely used, Harrison handling the reins with easy competence. The town was small, barely more than a main street with a handful of businesses: the mercantile, a saloon, a church, the blacksmith, a bank, and the sheriff's office. A few houses clustered behind the main street, and that was it. Ruby City had been founded during the silver boom of the 1860s, but the mines had played out and the town was slowly dying, hanging on out of sheer stubbornness. Beatrice felt the stares as soon as they rolled down the main street. People stopped their conversations to watch. Mrs. Patterson, standing outside the mercantile, saw Beatrice and immediately grabbed her daughter's arm and pulled her inside. 2 men sitting outside the saloon pointed and muttered to each other. "Friendly place," Harrison observed dryly. "I warned you." They pulled up in front of the mercantile, and Harrison helped Beatrice down from the wagon with old-fashioned courtesy. As they walked toward the door, Sheriff Coleman stepped out of his office across the street. "Miss Hollis," he called out, his voice carrying in the quiet morning air. "Didn't expect to see you in town today." "I need supplies, Sheriff," Beatrice replied evenly. "I see you've brought company." The sheriff's eyes raked over Harrison with obvious suspicion. "Don't believe I know you, stranger." "Harrison Noble," Harrison said, his tone polite but not deferential. "I'm helping Miss Hollis with some repairs on her property." "That's so." The sheriff's expression was skeptical. "Might want to ask around town about Miss Hollis before you get too involved there, Noble. She's got a reputation." "So I've heard," Harrison said mildly. "I've also heard that people around here have a tendency to believe superstitious nonsense rather than face facts." "I don't put much stock in curses, Sheriff. I put stock in hard work and good character, and Miss Hollis has shown me plenty of both." The sheriff's face reddened. "You've been warned. Don't come crying to me when your luck turns sour." "I won't," Harrison promised, then turned his back on the sheriff, a deliberate dismissal, and opened the mercantile door for Beatrice. Inside, the store was dim and crowded with goods. Mr. Reynolds, the owner, stood behind the counter, his expression carefully neutral. His wife, who usually helped in the store, was conspicuously absent. "Miss Hollis," Reynolds said with a curt nod. "Your usual order." "Yes, please, and I'll need extra flour this month and some nails if you have them. 3 pounds should do." Reynolds began gathering the items, moving slowly as if handling Beatrice's order pained him. Harrison walked around the store examining the goods, his presence somehow making the space feel smaller. "You're new in town," Reynolds said to Harrison, more statement than question. "Just passing through," Harrison replied easily. "Though I might stay a while. Miss Hollis's property has potential, and I like the look of this country." "Might want to keep moving," Reynolds said bluntly. "Things tend to go wrong around Miss Hollis." "Funny," Harrison said, his tone hardening. "The only thing I've seen go wrong is the way this town treats a woman who's done nothing but mind her own business and survive despite your hostility." "That's not a curse, Mr. Reynolds. That's just you and your neighbors being cruel." Reynolds slammed a bag of flour on the counter with more force than necessary. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what's happened here." "Then enlighten me," Harrison challenged. "What exactly has Miss Hollis done to deserve being shunned and blamed for every misfortune?" "Her husband died under suspicious circumstances," Reynolds said, lowering his voice. "Then bad things started happening. The Patterson barn burning, Chen's mine collapse, old widow Morrison's heart giving out right after she spoke to Miss Hollis at church. That's not coincidence." "That's exactly coincidence," Harrison said firmly. "Barns burn in dry weather. Mines collapse because mining is dangerous work. Elderly people die because that's what happens to everyone eventually. You're seeing patterns where there are none because it's easier than accepting that bad things happen randomly." "Believe what you want," Reynolds muttered, totaling up Beatrice's order. "That'll be $12.30. Beatrice counted out the money carefully from her small purse, every dollar precious. As Reynolds handed over the goods, the door opened, and a young woman entered, perhaps 19 or 20, with auburn hair and a pretty face. She stopped short when she saw Beatrice. "Miss Hollis," she said, her voice uncertain. "Miss Reynolds," Beatrice replied, recognizing the shopkeeper's daughter, Emma. Emma glanced at her father, then back at Beatrice. "I wanted to say I never believed what people said about you. I think it's wrong the way they treat you." "Emma." Mr. Reynolds snapped. "Go help your mother in the back." "No, Pa, it's not right and you know it." Emma lifted her chin defiantly. Miss Hollis was always kind to me. She gave me her old books when I was learning to read. She doesn't deserve this. Get in the back, girl, before you bring trouble on us. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she held her ground for another moment, looking at Beatrice. I'm sorry, she whispered, then fled to the back room. The silence that followed was heavy. Beatrice gathered her packages, her hands trembling slightly, and Harrison took most of them from her without comment. Thank you for your business, Miss Hollis, Reynolds said stiffly. Outside, Beatrice took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling like she had been holding her breath the entire time. Harrison loaded the supplies into the wagon, his movements sharp with suppressed anger. That was harder to watch than I expected, he admitted. The fear in that man's eyes, the way he looks at you like you're something dangerous. And that poor girl, wanting to speak her mind but afraid of her own father's reaction. That's my life, Beatrice said quietly. Day after day. That's why I stopped coming to town unless absolutely necessary. Harrison climbed up into the wagon and offered his hand to help Beatrice up. Once she was seated beside him, he didn't immediately start the horses. Instead, he turned to her, his expression serious. I want you to know something, Beatrice. I meant what I said in there. I don't believe you're cursed. I think this town has treated you abominably, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves. But more than that, I think you're the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever met, and I consider it a privilege to know you. Beatrice felt tears sting her eyes. Harrison, please. Don't say things you don't mean. I never do. He reached out and gently took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I know it's only been a little over a week since we met. I know you have no reason to trust me or anyone else, but I need you to understand that I see you, Beatrice. Not the curse, not the widow, not the outcast. I see you and I think you're extraordinary. A tear slipped down Beatrice's cheek before she could stop it. Harrison reached up with his other hand and gently wiped it away, the gesture so tender it made her heart ache. Why? She whispered. Why are you being so kind to me? Because you deserve kindness. And because every day I spend working beside you, every conversation we share, every meal we eat together, I find myself falling for you a little more. I know it's too soon to say such things. I know I'm probably frightening you. But I promised myself after my father died that I wouldn't waste time, that I'd be honest about what I wanted. And I want to be here, with you, building a life together if you'll have me. Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. She stared at Harrison, this man who had ridden into her life just over a week ago, this stranger who saw past the curse to the woman underneath. Part of her wanted to pull away, to protect herself from the inevitable hurt that came from letting people close. But a larger part of her, the part that had been lonely for so long, wanted to believe that maybe this was real, maybe this was her chance at happiness. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm scared that if I let myself care about you, something terrible will happen. I'm scared that the town is right and I really am cursed. I'm scared that you'll wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Then I'll be blessed to have you, Harrison said softly, and the words seemed to echo in the quiet morning air, a promise and a declaration. Whatever comes, curse or blessing, good times or bad, I'll be blessed to have you in my life. That's how I see it, Beatrice. You're not a curse. You're a blessing I didn't know I was looking for. Beatrice felt something inside her break open, some wall she had built around her heart crumbling away. She turned her hand in Harrison's grip and squeezed his fingers. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to trust again, how to let someone in. We'll figure it out together, Harrison said. One day at a time. There's no rush, no pressure. I'm not going anywhere. They sat there in the wagon on the main street of Ruby City, hands clasped, while the town watched and whispered. And for the first time in 3 years, Beatrice didn't care what they thought. She had Harrison beside her, and that made all the difference. The ride back to the property was quiet but comfortable, a new understanding settling between them. When they arrived, Harrison unloaded the supplies while Beatrice put away the groceries. As she worked, she found herself humming, a habit she had lost years ago, and the sound of her own voice surprised her. That evening, they ate dinner together in Beatrice's small cabin, rather than separately as they had been doing. It was a simple meal, but everything tasted better with Harrison sitting across from her, telling her stories about his travels, making her laugh with descriptions of the characters he had met on the road. "There was this old prospector up in the mountains," Harrison said, grinning at the memory. "Must have been 80 if he was a day, living in a shack that was more holes than walls. He was convinced he was going to strike it rich any day, had been saying the same thing for 40 years according to the locals. But he was the happiest man I ever met. He had his burrow, his mine, and his dreams, and that was enough for him." "What happened to him?" Beatrice asked. "Far as I know, he's still up there, digging away, happy as can be. Sometimes I think he had the right idea. Happiness isn't about striking it rich or having everything go your way. It's about finding contentment with what you have and who you're with." "Is that what you found here?" Beatrice asked, then immediately felt bold for asking. Harrison's eyes met hers across the table, serious and warm. "I think I'm finding it. Are you?" Beatrice considered the question. A month ago, she had been alone, afraid, convinced her life would never be more than survival. Now she had Harrison, had his help and his company and his growing affection. The work was still hard, the future still uncertain, but she woke up each morning with something to look forward to. "Yes," she said softly, "I think I am." Harrison's smile was like sunrise, and Beatrice felt warmth spread through her chest. They cleaned up dinner together, moving around the small cabin in comfortable synchronization. And when Harrison finally headed to the barn for the night, Beatrice stood in the doorway and watched him go, her heart fuller than it had been in years. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hard work and small joys. Harrison continued making improvements to the property, and Beatrice found herself able to accomplish more with his help. They expanded the garden, and with careful watering from the well, the plants began to flourish. Harrison built a better coop for the chickens, which stopped losing birds to predators. He even managed to trade some work with a neighboring rancher for 2 young goats, which would provide milk and eventually kids to sell. Through it all, Harrison and Beatrice grew closer. They worked side by side during the day and spent the evenings talking, sharing their histories, their hopes, their fears. Harrison told her about his dream of having a ranch again, of breeding horses and building something that would last. Beatrice confessed that she had always wanted children, a house full of noise and laughter, but had thought that dream lost when Thomas died. "It's not lost," Harrison said gently. "Dreams don't die unless we let them." One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Harrison reached over and took Beatrice's hand. The gesture had become familiar over the past weeks, but it still sent a flutter through her stomach. "Beatrice, I need to tell you something," Harrison said, his voice serious. Beatrice's heart clenched. Here it comes, she thought. He's going to leave. He's realized the town will never accept him as long as he's with me, and he's going to move on. "I've fallen in love with you," Harrison said, and Beatrice's prepared defenses crumbled. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a month, but I can't pretend anymore. I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and your stubbornness. I love the way you hum when you cook, and the way you talk to the chickens like they understand you. I love how you've survived everything this world has thrown at you and come out still able to hope. I'm in love with you, and I needed you to know." Beatrice stared at him, her emotions a tangle she couldn't begin to sort. Fear and joy and disbelief all warred within her. "You can't," she whispered. "Harrison, you can't love me. I'm cursed. Everyone who gets close to me suffers." "Stop," Harrison said firmly, taking both her hands now. "Stop believing their lies. You are not cursed. You're the best thing that's happened to me in years, maybe ever, and I refuse to let their fear and superstition keep me from being happy with you. But what if something happens to you? What if they're right and I really do bring bad luck?" "Then I'll be blessed to have you anyway," Harrison said, echoing his words from that day in town. "Whatever comes, I want to face it with you. I want to build a life with you. I want to marry you if you'll have me." Beatrice's breath caught. "Mary, I know it's soon. I know you need time. But yes, Mary, I want you as my wife, Beatrice. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep beside you every night. I want to work this land with you and build something lasting together. I want children with you, a family, a future. I want everything, and I want it with you." Tears were streaming down Beatrice's face now, but for the first time in so long, they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm terrified. But I love you too, Harrison. I think I started falling for you that first night when you listened to my story and didn't run away. I love you, and yes, I'll marry you." Harrison let out a whoop of joy and pulled Beatrice into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart pounding against her chest, matching the rapid beat of her own. When he pulled back to look at her, his eyes were bright with happiness. "I don't have a ring," he said. "I don't have much of anything to offer you except myself and my promise to love you until my last breath." "That's everything," Beatrice said. And then Harrison was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and nothing else mattered but this moment, this man, this unexpected love that had bloomed in the desert of her loneliness. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. "We'll need to figure out when and where to get married. I doubt the church in town would welcome us." "I don't need a church wedding," Beatrice said. "I just need you. Maybe we could go to Carson City, find a justice of the peace there. Or," Harrison said slowly, "we could get married right here on our land. I met a circuit preacher a few towns back. He might be willing to come out and perform the ceremony. We don't need the town's approval or blessing. We just need each other and someone to make it legal." "Our land," Beatrice repeated, loving the sound of it. "I like that." They spent the next hour making plans, talking about the future with an excitement Beatrice had thought she would never feel again. Harrison wanted to invest in more livestock, to slowly build up a herd. Beatrice wanted to improve the cabin, to add a room for children and make it a real home. They talked about planting an orchard, about breeding horses, about all the possibilities that stretched before them. "We should go to town tomorrow," Harrison said. "I want to buy you a ring, something proper to show the world you're mine and I'm yours." "Harrison, we can't afford luxuries like that. We need to save every penny for the ranch." "This isn't a luxury," Harrison said firmly. "This is important. You deserve a ring, Beatrice. You deserve to have something beautiful that shows how much you're loved. Let me do this for you." Beatrice wanted to argue, but the look in Harrison's eyes stopped her. This mattered to him, and she was learning that sometimes love meant letting someone give to you as well as giving to them. "All right," she agreed. "We'll go to town tomorrow." The next morning, they rode into Ruby City with Beatrice sitting close to Harrison in the wagon, her hand in his. She felt different this time, armored by Harrison's love, less vulnerable to the town's hostility. They headed straight for the small jewelry shop run by Mr. Goldstein, an older man who had always been neutral if not friendly toward Beatrice. He looked up from his work when they entered, his expression curious. "Miss Hollis, Mr. Noble," he greeted them. "What can I do for you today? "We're looking for a wedding ring," Harrison said, pride evident in his voice. "Miss Hollis has agreed to be my wife, and I want her to have a ring that shows the world how lucky I am." Mr. Goldstein's eyebrows rose in surprise, but then a smile crossed his weathered face. "Congratulations! That's wonderful news. Let me show you what I have." He brought out a tray of rings, mostly simple bands with the occasional small stone. Beatrice's eye was drawn to a delicate gold band with a small garnet set in it, the red stone catching the light. "That one's lovely," she said softly. Harrison picked it up, examining it. "May I?" He asked Beatrice, and when she nodded, he slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the garnet glowing against her skin. "It's perfect," Harrison declared. "We'll take it, and a wedding band to match." As Mr. Goldstein wrapped the rings, the shop door opened and Mrs. Patterson entered, stopping short when she saw Beatrice and Harrison. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp with disapproval. "Buying a wedding ring," Harrison said pleasantly. "Miss Hollis and I are getting married." Mrs. Patterson's face turned an alarming shade of red. "You're marrying her? Are you insane? She's cursed. She'll bring nothing but misery and death to you." "That's enough," Mr. Goldstein said firmly, surprising everyone. "I've kept quiet about this foolishness for too long, but no more. There is no curse. Beatrice Hollis is a good woman who's been treated shamefully by this town, and I for one am happy to see her finding happiness. Mr. Noble is a lucky man, and anyone who says otherwise can take their business elsewhere." Mrs. Patterson gaped at him. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious." "Now, did you come here to shop or just to spread malicious gossip?" "Because I only have time for one of those." Mrs. Patterson spluttered, then turned on her heel and marched out of the shop, slamming the door behind her. Mr. Goldstein shook his head. "I should have done that years ago." "I'm sorry, Miss Hollis. I let fear keep me silent when I should have spoken up for you." "Thank you," Beatrice said, her voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." "You two have my blessing and my best wishes," Mr. Goldstein said, handing over the rings. "Be happy together and don't let small-minded people steal your joy." As they left the shop, Beatrice couldn't stop looking at the ring on her finger, the physical symbol of Harrison's love and commitment. Around them, people stared and whispered, but for once, Beatrice didn't care. Let them talk. She had Harrison, and that was worth more than all their approval. They were heading back to the wagon when Sheriff Coleman intercepted them, his expression grim. "Noble, I need a word with you. Alone." "Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of my fiancé," Harrison replied coolly. The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Fine. I'm warning you officially that there's been talk. Some of the men in town think you're either a fool or a con man, and they don't like outsiders coming in and stirring up trouble. I'm not stirring up anything. I'm minding my own business and helping the woman I love. That woman is trouble, whether you believe it or not. For your own safety, I'm suggesting you move on before things get ugly." Harrison stepped closer to the sheriff, his posture radiating controlled anger. "Are you threatening me, Sheriff? I'm warning you. There's a difference." "Here's my warning then," Harrison said, his voice low and dangerous. "I'm going to marry Beatrice Hollis. I'm going to help her build the best ranch in this county. And if anyone has a problem with that, if anyone tries to hurt her or frighten her or make her life difficult, they'll answer to me. Are we clear?" The sheriff stared at Harrison for a long moment, then stepped back. "On your head be it. Don't say I didn't warn you." As they drove out of town, Beatrice was quiet, worry gnawing at her. "Harrison, maybe he's right. Maybe you should go while you still can. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me." Harrison pulled the wagon to a stop just outside of town and turned to face her. "Beatrice, look at me." When she did, he cupped her face in his hands. I'm not going anywhere. I meant every word I said. I love you. We're going to get married, we're going to build a life together, and no amount of threats or superstitious nonsense is going to change that. Do you trust me?" "Yes," Beatrice said, and realized she meant it completely. "I trust you. Then trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that we're stronger together than apart. Trust that our love is worth fighting for." Beatrice nodded, leaning into his touch. "I love you, Harrison Noble." "And I love you, Beatrice Hollis. Soon to be Beatrice Noble, if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly." They sealed the promise with a kiss, right there on the road where anyone could see, and Beatrice felt a fierce joy rise in her chest. Let the town talk. Let them believe their foolish curses. She had found love in the most unexpected place, and nothing would take that from her. The next few weeks were a flurry of preparation. Harrison managed to track down the circuit preacher he had mentioned, a kindly man named Reverend Walsh, who agreed to perform the ceremony. The wedding was set for the first Saturday in October, giving them a month to prepare. Beatrice sewed a new dress from fabric Harrison insisted on buying, a simple but elegant design in deep blue that brought out her eyes. Harrison cleaned up the cabin until it shined, built new furniture, and made everything as perfect as he could manage. They sent no invitations to the townspeople, knowing they wouldn't be welcome anyway. But Beatrice wrote a letter to her aunt in Sacramento, her only surviving relative, letting her know about the wedding. She didn't expect her aunt to make the journey, but it felt important to tell her. The week before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Emma Reynolds appeared at their property, riding a horse and carrying a basket. "Emma," Beatrice said in surprise, coming out to meet her. "Is everything all right?" "I'm fine," Emma said, dismounting. I wanted to bring you this. A wedding gift." She held out the basket, which contained jars of preserves, a beautiful embroidered tablecloth, and a small bouquet of dried flowers. "Emma, you didn't have to do this. Your father will be angry." "I don't care," Emma said with surprising fierceness. "I'm 18 years old, and I'm tired of being afraid all the time. You were kind to me when I was young, and you never deserved how this town treated you. I want you to know that not everyone believes the awful things they say. Some of us see the truth." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. This means more than you know. I wish I could come to your wedding, but my father would never allow it. But I want you to be happy, Miss Hollis. You and Mr. Noble both. You deserve happiness." After Emma left, Harrison found Beatrice standing in the cabin holding the tablecloth and crying. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Nothing's wrong," Beatrice said, laughing through her tears. "Everything's right. Emma brought us a wedding gift. She said she doesn't believe the curse. Harrison, maybe we're not as alone as I thought." Harrison pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You're never going to be alone again. I promise you that." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, unseasonably cool for October in Nevada. Beatrice woke in her cabin and dressed carefully in her new blue dress, her hands trembling slightly with nerves and excitement. This was really happening. She was getting married, starting a new life, choosing love and hope over fear and isolation. Harrison had spent the night in the barn, observing propriety, but as Beatrice stepped outside, she saw he had been busy. He had created a wedding bower near the cottonwood trees, draping fabric and stringing wild flowers he must have ridden miles to find. The effect was simple but beautiful, a perfect spot for a ceremony. Reverend Walsh arrived mid-morning, a round man with a genuine smile. To Beatrice's shock, he wasn't alone. Mr. Goldstein was with him, and Emma Reynolds, looking nervous but determined. Behind them came an older couple Beatrice recognized as the Johnsons, who ran a small ranch 15 miles to the east. "We heard there was a wedding," Mrs. Johnson said, her weathered face kind. We thought you might like some witnesses who actually wish you well." Beatrice was speechless. Harrison came to stand beside her, taking her hand. "We're honored you came," he said warmly. "Thank you. There were only 6 people at the wedding, but it was enough." Reverend Walsh performed a simple ceremony, speaking of love and commitment and the blessings of finding a partner to walk through life beside. When it came time for vows, Harrison spoke his clearly and firmly. "I, Harrison Noble, take you, Beatrice Hollis, to be my wife. I promise to love you in good times and bad, in sickness and health, in prosperity and hardship. I promise to stand beside you against anyone who would harm you, to believe in you when you doubt yourself, and to cherish you all the days of my life. You are my blessing, and I am honored to be your husband." Beatrice's voice shook but held as she spoke her own vows. "I, Beatrice Hollis, take you, Harrison Noble, to be my husband. I promise to love you faithfully, to trust in your strength when mine fails, to build a life with you based on honesty and respect. You came into my life when I had given up hope, and you showed me that love is still possible. I am blessed to have you, and I will cherish you always." Reverend Walsh pronounced them husband and wife, and when Harrison kissed Beatrice, their small gathering applauded. Beatrice felt happiness flood through her, pure and bright and real. They celebrated with a simple meal Beatrice and Harrison had prepared together, and their few guests stayed for the afternoon, talking and laughing. Emma pulled Beatrice aside at one point. "I'm leaving Ruby City," she confided. "I've been accepted to a teaching college in Sacramento. I'm going to make something of myself, away from my father and his fear. You inspired me, Miss Hollis, Mrs. Noble, I mean. You showed me that you can survive even when the whole world seems against you. I wanted to thank you for that." "You're going to do wonderful things, Emma," Beatrice said, hugging the younger woman. "I know it." As evening fell and their guests departed, Beatrice and Harrison finally found themselves alone, married, ready to begin their life together. They stood in the doorway of the cabin, their cabin now, and looked out at the property they would build together. "Are you happy?" Harrison asked, his arm around her waist. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Beatrice admitted. "This morning I was Beatrice Hollis, the cursed widow. Tonight I'm Beatrice Noble, your wife. It feels like a dream." "It's real," Harrison promised, "and it's forever. Come on, Mrs. Noble, let's go inside and start our forever." That night, as they lay together as husband and wife for the first time, Beatrice marveled at how much her life had changed. In Harrison's arms, she felt safe and cherished and loved. The loneliness that had been her constant companion for 3 years was gone, replaced by the warmth of being known and accepted completely. The next morning, they woke early and got to work. There was still so much to be done on the ranch, and now they tackled it together as partners in every sense. Harrison's optimism and energy seemed boundless, and Beatrice found herself matching it, her own hope growing stronger each day. But their happiness couldn't remain isolated forever. A week after the wedding, trouble came calling. Beatrice was in the garden when she heard horses approaching. She looked up to see Sheriff Coleman and 3 other men riding toward the cabin. Harrison emerged from the barn, his expression wary. "Sheriff," Harrison greeted him coolly. "What brings you out here? We need to talk, Noble. There's been an incident in town." "What kind of incident?" "The bank was robbed last night. 2 men got away with nearly $5,000. Thing is, one of the witnesses said the robbers mentioned heading out this way." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "And you think we had something to do with it?" "I think it's mighty convenient that you show up out of nowhere, marry the cursed widow, and then the bank gets robbed. Some folks in town are saying maybe you're a criminal who saw an opportunity." "That's ridiculous," Beatrice said, anger overriding her usual caution. Harrison has been here with me every day and night. He had nothing to do with any robbery. Can you prove that? One of the other men asked, a rancher named Davies who had always been particularly hostile toward Beatrice. She just did, Harrison said firmly. My wife says I was here, and I was. We're married now, Sheriff. That means she can vouch for me and I for her. A wife's testimony doesn't count for much, Davies sneered, especially when the wife is a woman like her. Harrison moved so fast that Beatrice barely saw it. One moment he was standing still, the next he had Davies by his shirt, pulled half off his horse. You will speak of my wife with respect, Harrison said, his voice deadly quiet. Or you'll answer to me. Are we clear? Harrison, let him go, Sheriff Coleman said, his hand moving toward his gun. Harrison released Davies but didn't back down. You come onto my property, you accuse me of crimes I didn't commit, and you insult my wife. I think you need to leave, Sheriff. Right now. We could arrest you for interfering with an investigation, Coleman warned. On what grounds? You have no evidence, no proof, nothing but the same superstitious nonsense this town has been spewing for years. If you want to find your bank robbers, go look for them. But you won't find them here because we had nothing to do with it. The standoff lasted another tense moment before Sheriff Coleman nodded curtly. We'll be watching you, Noble, both of you. After they left, Harrison was furious, pacing the yard like a caged animal. Beatrice went to him, putting her hands on his chest until he stopped and looked at her. It's all right, she said softly. It's not all right. They have no right to harass you like this, to blame you for things you didn't do. I know. But we knew this wouldn't be easy. We knew the town wouldn't suddenly accept us just because we're married. But Harrison, we have each other. That's what matters. Harrison pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I won't let them hurt you, Beatrice. I swear it. I know. And I won't let them drive you away. We're in this together, remember. But the incident left both of them shaken. Over the next few weeks, they noticed increased hostility from the town. When Beatrice went to the mercantile, Mr. Reynolds was cold and reluctant to serve her. Other businesses refused their trade entirely. Someone cut their fence in 3 places, letting the goats wander until Harrison spent a whole day rounding them up. Through it all, they held onto each other and their determination to build a life together. Harrison proved himself to be not just a hard worker but a brilliant rancher. Under his care, the property began to truly thrive. The garden produced abundantly. The goats had kids that they sold for good money, and Harrison's reputation as a skilled horseman brought occasional work from other ranchers who cared more about ability than superstition. By December, Beatrice realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but hadn't been sure until the morning sickness started. She told Harrison one evening after dinner, nervous about his reaction. A baby, Harrison said, his eyes wide. We're going to have a baby. Yes. Sometime in late spring, I think. Are you happy about it? Harrison let out a whoop of joy and swept Beatrice into his arms, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. Happy, I'm ecstatic. We're going to be parents, he set her down carefully, suddenly worried. Are you all right? Should you be working so hard? We need to take care of you and the baby. I'm fine, Beatrice assured him, touched by his concern. Women have babies all the time while still working. I'll be careful, I promise. That night, Harrison held her close, his hand resting protectively on her still flat belly. I'm going to be a father, he said wonderingly. I'm going to teach our child to ride and to read and to be strong and kind like you. Like us both, Beatrice corrected. This child is lucky to have you as a father, Harrison. Winter in Nevada could be harsh, but Harrison had prepared well. He had insulated the cabin, stocked plenty of firewood, and laid in supplies. They spent the cold months working on indoor projects. Harrison carved a beautiful cradle for the baby, while Beatrice sewed tiny clothes and blankets on Christmas morning. Beatrice woke to find that Harrison had made her breakfast and left a small wrapped package beside her plate. Inside was a delicate silver locket on a chain. "Open it," Harrison urged, his eyes bright with excitement. Inside were two tiny portraits, one of Harrison, one of Beatrice, painted with incredible skill. "Where did you get these?" Beatrice asked in wonder. "I rode to Carson City last month when I said I was going to check on horses for sale. I had them commissioned. I wanted you to have something special, something that shows that we're a family now, and there's room in the back for pictures of our children when they come." Beatrice threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "It's perfect. You're perfect. I love you so much." "I love you too. Merry Christmas, my beautiful wife." They spent a quiet, peaceful Christmas together, just the two of them and the baby growing inside Beatrice. It was the happiest Christmas Beatrice could remember, unmarred by the town's hostility because they had chosen to isolate themselves from it. But in late January, their peace was shattered. Harrison had gone to Carson City for supplies, and Beatrice was alone when she heard horses approaching. She looked out to see 5 men she didn't recognize, rough-looking characters with guns on their hips. Fear shot through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She picked up Harrison's rifle from its place by the door and stepped outside, the gun held ready. "That's far enough," she called out. "State your business." One of the men, a large brute with a scarred face, laughed. "We heard tell there was water here and we're thirsty travelers. Thought you might share." "The trough is there," Beatrice said, gesturing toward the barn. "Water your horses and move on." "Maybe we want more than water," another man said, his eyes roaming over Beatrice in a way that made her skin crawl. "Maybe we want some of that hospitality your husband's been enjoying." Beatrice raised the rifle, her hand steady despite her terror. "You'll leave now, or I'll shoot." "I won't ask again." "She's got some fire," the scarred man said. "I like that. Come on, boys. Let's show her how we treat unfriendly folks." They dismounted, advancing toward the cabin, and Beatrice's finger tightened on the trigger. She had never shot anyone before, but she would to protect herself and her baby. She was about to fire when the sound of a galloping horse made everyone turn. Harrison appeared over the rise, riding hard, and when he saw what was happening, he let out a roar of rage that sent chills down Beatrice's spine. He didn't slow down, just rode straight at the men, his own rifle in his hands. He fired a warning shot that kicked up dust at their feet. "Get away from my wife," Harrison shouted, his voice deadly. "Get away now or I'll kill every last one of you." The men saw the fury in his eyes, and the way he handled his rifle and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. They mounted up quickly and rode off, the scarred man calling back threats and curses. Harrison barely glanced at them, riding straight to Beatrice and dismounting before his horse even stopped. He pulled her into his arms, the rifle falling forgotten to the ground. "Are you all right?" "Did they hurt you?" "The baby, we're fine," Beatrice said, shaking now with delayed reaction. "They didn't touch me. You came in time." Harrison held her close, his whole body trembling. "When I saw them surrounding you, I thought I've never been so scared in my life." "If they had hurt you, but they didn't. You saved us." But the incident left them both deeply shaken. Harrison became more protective, insisting on accompanying Beatrice whenever she left the property, keeping his rifle close at all times. And Beatrice, who had been trying so hard to believe that the curse wasn't real, felt old fears rising again. What if danger really did follow her? What if Harrison got hurt because of her? A week later, Sheriff Coleman appeared at their door again, this time with troubling news. "Those men who threatened your wife," he said without preamble. They're part of a gang that's been operating in the territory. Dangerous men. We've been tracking them, and witnesses say they were specifically asking about this property before they came out here. Why would they target us? Harrison demanded. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But Noble, I need to be straight with you. There's been talk that maybe you're connected to them somehow, that maybe you were part of their gang and this whole thing with Miss Hollis with your wife is some kind of cover. That's insane, Beatrice said. Harrison came here months before any of this started. I know. And for what it's worth, I don't believe it, but I'm telling you what people are saying. You two need to be careful. These are dangerous times, and having the town against you makes you vulnerable. After he left, Harrison and Beatrice sat in their cabin trying to make sense of it all. None of this makes any sense, Harrison said, frustrated. Why would anyone target us? We have nothing worth stealing. Except the well, Beatrice said slowly. Harrison, our well still has water when everyone else's has gone dry. Water is worth more than gold in a drought. Harrison's eyes widened. You think they want the property for the water rights? It's the only thing that makes sense. And if people in town think you're connected to criminals, if they think I'm cursed, then we have no allies. No one would defend us if someone tried to take what's ours. Then we need to change that, Harrison said with sudden determination. We need to show the town that we're not their enemies, that we're not criminals or curses. We need to be part of the community, whether they want us or not. Over the next few weeks, they implemented Harrison's plan. When they learned that the church roof was damaged in a storm, Harrison rode to town and offered his labor for free. When the Patterson family's cow went missing, Harrison helped search for it, finding it trapped in a ravine and bringing it home safely. When old Mrs. Morrison fell ill again, Beatrice sent over food and medicine despite the woman having been one of her harshest critics. Slowly, grudgingly, some attitudes began to shift. Not everyone, there were still plenty in town who held fast to their superstitions and suspicions. But a few people began to nod to them on the street. Mr. Reynolds started being more polite in the mercantile. The preacher at the church thanked Harrison publicly for his work on the roof. And when word got out that Beatrice was expecting a baby, something seemed to soften in the town. Maybe it was the universal appeal of new life, or maybe it was seeing how devoted Harrison was to his pregnant wife, but the outright hostility began to fade into mere unfriendliness. It's not much, Beatrice said to Harrison one evening as they felt the baby kick for the first time. But it's progress. It's everything, Harrison said, his hand spread protectively over her swollen belly. We're proving them wrong one day at a time. We're showing them that there's no curse, just people living their lives and trying to build something good. In April, with Beatrice's due date approaching, they received an unexpected visitor. Emma Reynolds returned to Ruby City, no longer the timid girl but a confident young woman, home for a brief visit. She came straight to the ranch, bringing news and congratulations. The teaching college is wonderful, she told them over tea. I'm learning so much, and I've made friends who actually think for themselves instead of just believing whatever they're told. When I told them about you two, about how you've been treated, they were horrified. It made me realize how small and afraid Ruby City has been. How is your father? Beatrice asked. Emma's expression turned sad. Sick. His heart. The doctor says he doesn't have long. He actually asked me to come see you to apologize on his behalf for how he's treated you. He's afraid of dying with that on his conscience. The next day, Beatrice and Harrison went to visit Mr. Reynolds. The shopkeeper looked frail in his sickbed, a shadow of the stern man he had been. Miss Hollis, Mrs. Noble, he said weakly. I'm glad you came. I need to tell you I'm sorry. I let fear rule me, let other people's superstitions cloud my judgment. You never did anything to deserve the way we treated you. I'm ashamed and I'm sorry. "I forgive you," Beatrice said simply and meant it. Holding on to anger took energy she needed for better things. "You're a better person than I ever was," Mr. Reynolds said. "I hope this town realizes what they almost lost in you." He died 2 days later, and at his funeral, the preacher spoke about fear and redemption and the importance of treating neighbors with kindness. Beatrice sat in the back of the church with Harrison's arm around her, and more than a few people turned to look at her with something that might have been shame. After the funeral, Mrs. Patterson approached them, her expression uncertain. "I was wrong about you," she said abruptly. "My barn didn't burn because of you. It burned because my husband fell asleep smoking his pipe in the hayloft. We knew it, but it was easier to blame you than to face the truth. I'm sorry for the pain we've caused you." One by one, others came forward with similar confessions. The mine collapse had been due to unsafe practices the owners had ignored. The sick child had caught fever from a traveling peddler, nothing to do with Beatrice at all. Every misfortune they had blamed on the curse had a simple, natural explanation, but it had been easier to have a scapegoat than to face reality. By the time Beatrice went into labor in mid-May, the town's attitude toward her had completely transformed. When word spread that she was having the baby, women she barely knew appeared at the ranch offering help. Mrs. Patterson came to assist with the birth, her experience as a midwife proving invaluable. Harrison paced outside, nearly wearing a path in the dirt, until Mrs. Patterson emerged with a smile. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, strong boy, and your wife is doing well." Harrison rushed inside to find Beatrice exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in the blanket she had sewn. The baby had dark hair like his father and was wailing lustily. "He's perfect," Harrison said in awe, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "You're perfect. I love you so much." "We need a name," Beatrice said softly. "What about Thomas after your first husband?" Harrison suggested. "To honor the past while we build the future." Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. "That's generous of you." "I'm not threatened by your past, Beatrice. It made you who you are, and who you are is the woman I love." "Then Thomas it is. Thomas Harrison Noble." The baby Tommy, as they soon started calling him, became the center of their world. Harrison proved to be a devoted father, getting up for nighttime feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding his son and marveling at him. And the town, seeing Harrison's devotion and Beatrice's joy, seemed to complete its transformation. People began visiting, bringing gifts for the baby. Emma came back from Sacramento especially to meet Tommy, bringing a beautiful blanket she had made herself. Even Sheriff Coleman stopped by to congratulate them and admit that he had been wrong about his suspicions. "You've been good for this town," he told Harrison. "You showed us our own prejudices and helped us become better people. Ruby City is lucky to have you both." As Tommy grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. With the town no longer hostile, Harrison was able to secure loans for expansion. They bought more livestock, built a proper barn, and expanded the cabin into a real house with multiple rooms. Harrison's skill with horses became well known, and people came from all over the territory to buy his trained animals. Beatrice started a small business selling produce and preserves, her goods highly sought after for their quality. She hired Emma, who had finished her teaching college but found herself drawn back to Ruby City, to help with the business side of things. When Tommy was 2, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was none of the fear and uncertainty of the first pregnancy, just joy and anticipation. Their daughter, Sarah, was born in the spring of 1885, a tiny, delicate thing with her mother's eyes and her father's smile. 2 children, Harrison said, holding Sarah while Tommy played at his feet. We're truly blessed. Remember when the town called me cursed, Beatrice said, watching her husband with their children. I think you had it right that first day. I'm not cursed. I'm blessed. Blessed to have you, blessed to have our children, blessed to have built this life together. Then I'll be blessed to have you, Harrison said softly, echoing the words that had become their private promise to each other. Always. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Tommy grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with his father and the horses. Sarah was wild and joyful, keeping everyone on their toes. A third child, a son they named Henry, arrived in 1887, completing their family. The ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Harrison's horses were known throughout Nevada and beyond for their quality. Beatrice's preserves won awards at county fairs. Their children grew up loved and happy, unaware of the struggles their parents had faced before they were born. Ruby City itself changed too. The old fears and superstitions faded as new people moved in and old prejudices died out. The town began to grow again, revitalized by the mining boom in nearby areas. The nobles became respected members of the community, Harrison serving on the town council and Beatrice helping to establish a proper school. Emma Reynolds eventually married the town's doctor, a young man who had moved to Ruby City for the opportunities it offered. She never forgot the kindness Beatrice had shown her, and the 2 women remained close friends all their lives. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Harrison took Beatrice on a picnic to the spot where they had held their wedding ceremony. The children were home with Emma for the afternoon, giving them rare time alone together. You ever regret it? Beatrice asked as they lay on a blanket under the cottonwood trees, watching clouds drift across the blue Nevada sky. Stopping here that day, marrying the cursed widow. Harrison rolled over to look at her, his gray-blue eyes as clear and honest as they had been the first time she met him. Not for a single second. That day I rode up to your property and saw you in the window. Something in my soul recognized you. I knew I was home. Everything good in my life started from that moment. I thought I was going to be alone forever, Beatrice admitted. I thought the rest of my life would be loneliness and fear and slowly withering away. Then you rode in and changed everything. We changed everything together, Harrison corrected. You were already strong, already surviving. I just gave you someone to share the load with. You gave me love when I thought love was impossible. You gave me a family when I thought I would never have children. You gave me back my life. Harrison pulled her close, kissing her with the passion and tenderness that had never faded between them. Then I'll be blessed to have you, he whispered against her lips. For the rest of our lives, I'll be blessed to have you. And as they lay there together, 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had faced down fear and prejudice and built something beautiful together. Beatrice knew that every word was true. The town had called her cursed, but Harrison had seen the truth. She wasn't cursed, she was blessed. Blessed with a love that had transformed her life, blessed with children who filled their home with joy, blessed with a partner who stood by her through everything. The curse had been a lie all along. The only truth was love, and the life they had built together, and the promise they renewed with every sunrise to cherish each other, to stand together, to be blessed in having one another until their last breath. Years later, when Beatrice was old and gray, surrounded by children and grandchildren, she would tell the story of how a stranger had ridden into her life when she had nothing and no one. She would tell them about the town that had feared her and the man who had loved her anyway. She would tell them that sometimes blessings come disguised as ordinary moments: a thirsty horse, a kind offer of water, a conversation by firelight. And she would tell them that When Harrison Noble had said those words, "Then I'll be blessed to have you," he had given her more than a promise. He had given her hope, and from that hope had grown everything beautiful in her life. The ranch prospered for generations, passed down through their children and their children's children. The story of Beatrice and Harrison became legend in Ruby City, the cursed widow and the cowboy who loved her anyway, who proved that love was stronger than fear, that kindness was more powerful than superstition, and that sometimes the greatest blessings come from the most unexpected places. And through it all, through decades of marriage and children raised and grandchildren born, Harrison and Beatrice never forgot those early days when they were just two lonely people who found each other and decided to build a life together. Every anniversary, they would return to the cottonwood trees where they had married, and Harrison would take Beatrice's hand and repeat the words that had become their promise. "Then I'll be blessed to have you." And Beatrice would smile, the same smile she had given him that first night by the fire when he had offered his help, and reply, "And I'm blessed to have you too." Their story ended not with dramatic gestures or grand proclamations, but with the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived, a love well earned, and a family well loved. They had faced the darkness together and emerged into light. They had been rejected by the world and built their own world anyway. They had taken the labels others tried to force upon them: cursed, unwanted, outcast, and transformed them into something beautiful. In the end, there was no curse. There never had been. There was only Beatrice and Harrison, two souls who found each other in the vast wilderness of the American West, who chose love over fear, who built a legacy that would last long after they were gone. And when Harrison Noble finally died at the age of 78, with Beatrice holding his hand and their children and grandchildren gathered around, his last words were the same ones he had spoken so many times before. "Then I'll be blessed to have you." Beatrice lived another 5 years, staying on the ranch they had built together, surrounded by family and love. She died peacefully in her sleep at 83, and those who found her said she was smiling. The ranch still stands today, run by the descendants of Harrison and Beatrice Noble, a testament to what two people can build when they refuse to believe in curses and choose instead to believe in each other. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, locals swear they can see two figures walking hand in hand under the cottonwood trees, still blessed to have each other, still proving that love is the greatest blessing of all.